Hello and welcome along. Here today we're going to be doing one of the more fundamental migrations that we do with MigrationWiz, and that is for mailboxes. We're going to be taking just half a dozen mailboxes from one Microsoft tenant, and we're going to be migrating that to a new M365 tenant. So I'm going to take you through how we do it, how we do the prerequisites, the setup, and bring in the users into the console, and then do the migration itself and really show you how those steps will work along the way. So before I start there, I want to guide your attention into this help desk article, which is the Exchange Online to Exchange Online Mailbox Migration Guide, as you can see here. And it does have a lot of information about how to perform everything that we're going to be doing and really make the migration successful. I'm going to be referring back to this as I go through because I want you to see what I'm doing with the steps that are inside this document and then see them in real time on both the source and the target tenant. So you'll see me come back to this one quite a lot, just so we can get an idea. So when you do it yourself, you do have some anchor points to say, I saw that in the documentation, I can go back to that and have a look. Now, I think the most important thing when you're setting up the prereqs and obviously preparing the source and the target is that you understand what is really going on in both and really how the migration actually does its work and how does it get into the tenant and transmit that data. And it does it with an application registration that we set up, and that gives the account and the MigrationWiz system access into those mailboxes so it can pull that information out. So that's obviously a very important step, is to have that done. And really this link here is the one that allows us to set this up with that modern auth requirement there. So really what we're going to do here is go through this for both tenants, and as you can see we're going to be creating the new app registration, assign the API permissions and grant the consent, and then bring that data back and then know where to put that into the MigrationWiz console. Now we also will need a service account that we get to have inside both source and target. Now that one is just an account that exists that it can connect to. The application registration is what does all the work, but obviously it needs to have a login so it can see things in the tenant as well. As I say, that does not require any admin rights to have that done, but you can't have MFA set up on that particular account. So that is one of the criteria. It must have the MFA disabled. So let me just quickly recap on what I'm going to do with the setup, just so you get a bit of an idea of the timeline here. Is we're going to be creating that app registration in the source tenant, and then I'll go off and do it in the target, but they are the same thing there. We'll create the service account and apply that, and then we're going to go into the MigrationWiz console and set up the project and attach to both the source and target applications in there. So what we do first is we'll jump into the source tenant, which is our normal admin screen here, and if you do show all, we're going to be doing this in identity because it's done in the Entra ID is really what we're saying here. So once that comes up, I can guide you into the application registration screen, which is here, and inside here if we look at all applications you can see what apps we have set up. So we're going to do a new registration, and we'll just call this one MigrationWiz, and we'll just hit register there. Leave those items there as the default items, but we do need to go to authentication first, and we need to tell it to allow the flows, the public flows there. So hit that and hit save, and that'll make that change. And then we go into API permissions, and this is where we give it the rights inside the M365 tenant to allow it to be able to get in and do this work. Now what we do here is we'll say add a permission, and we want APIs my organization uses. And if we go into here and just type in Office, you'll find there you can see Exchange Online, which is the one we need, and we want to apply that with application permissions, and we need that full access as app turned on there. Let me say add permission. We'll then go back in there because there is another one we need on the APIs that it uses, and we'll put in Office again and Exchange Online. Now we want to do delegated permissions for this one, and we're going to be using the EWS, which is this tick here, and add that in. So now with those two we will say to grant the admin consent and say yes. Now this all needs to be done obviously with a global admin account, so you may need someone to assist if you don't have the GA yourself, but we need to add these items in. So then we're going to be creating the client secret. So we'll go into secrets and certificates there, and we've got client secrets. We'll add a new one, we just call this one MigrationWiz as well. We'll make it 180 days. Obviously, if your migration is going longer than that, you can put it longer, or you can refresh the client secret. That's up to you, but that's the default setting, is the 180 days. So we'll hit add. Now we'll come up with the value. Now we do need to copy and paste that out to clipboard, which I recommend we just do with notepads, as you can see there. Really, because this only displays just once. So once you save that, you're not going to be able to get in. You can create another client secret, but it's a security mechanism, so it only displays once. So just grab that quite quickly. Now, what you then do is go back to the overview here, and we also want the client ID and the tenant ID, or the directory ID. So I'm going to grab those as well, and I'm going to put those into clipboard as well, because like I say, we will need these a bit later on. So you can see what I've done here is just really grabbing those items. Now I can put in here, just so we know, which we've, client and tenant. So we'll put that down here. And that's simply it inside the application registration. But remember, we do need that service account. So we'll go into the user details here. You can see I've already created one here. We call it the MigrationWiz at cozymouse.com. That's our source tenant. And so that is set up and ready to go. It is licensed. It doesn't need to be licensed. I just have it because I receive email on that one if I'm doing any migration work with it. But essentially, it just needs to exist and not have MFA attached to it. And that is quite important. You do need to exclude that from your MFA policies. So if you're using conditional access, then obviously that's where you want to go for that. So let's jump into the MigrationWiz project now, and let's get this one on the road. So what we're going to do is, just in a normal project screen of your work group, we'll just hit create project here, and it's going to be a mailbox project. And we want to give it the details. You can see we need to set up both the source and the destination side. This is the main project information, so we put a test name in here. And I'll select one of our customers. I do have Cozy Mouse in here from previously, so I'm just going to select that one and hit next step. And this is where we set up the endpoint for the source. So we're going to say it's a new endpoint, which will be a 365. So we'll just put that in here, like so, and we'll choose our endpoint type as just being Microsoft 365. Now this is where we put in the credentials around the service account that we had. So that will be the MigrationWiz at cozymouse.com, and with our password accordingly, and we just hit add. And that'll take us into the next setup screen, where we can put in that client ID and the tenant ID and also the client secret. Now this is obviously what we had handy in our notepad here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take each one of these and just pop them in. And we've got our client ID as well, and the tenant. There we go. Then just hit next step, and takes us through to our destination settings. So likewise in the destination, we'll say a new one, and we're going to put this one as the Migration Frog M365, which will be obviously 365 as well there. And there's our credentials that we're after. So that's going to be the MigrationWiz at, in this case, Migration Frog, and our password there as well. There we go, and hit add. That will drop it in, take us back to this screen, which we can then paste in these values from the other tenant. There we go, so we'll grab this one, the client, drop it in there, and the tenant as well. There we go. So we'd hit next step on that, and we now get the option to have a look at whether we want to do some coexistence or skip. I'm going to leave these out for this particular migration. We don't need those two, but I will hit save and go to summary, and that is actually going to go in and check that it can log in without MFA for those accounts. So if that comes back, and as you can see like that, it's got a failure, which is wonderful. Thank you very much. So then we'll hit next step, and that's going to go through and validate. Once we hit this save and go to summary, it'll validate that those credentials are correct and it can attach. We do have the option to put in T2T coexistence. I'm going to skip that one for now, and also we're not going to be skipping the credential validation. We do want to test that the accounts are correct. So we hit save and go to summary, and that will then check that everything is good. You can see there, project saved. It's happy with all those these accounts that we put in with the username's password. It's happy that MFA is turned off for those 2 service accounts that we're using. And really, once we hit save project here, you can see we are ready to crack on with putting our users in there. So really what we've done there is we've just set up everything in the source and the target tenant to say, can it attach to it? Can it see the mailboxes on both sides and get ready to perform the migration itself? So at this point in the project, really what we're looking for now is to say, what users are we going to be bringing across from, in this case, the Cozy Mouse, the source tenant, across into the Migration Frog, which is the target tenant. Now, the easiest way really to do that is to use that discovery tool, which is an item you can download. It's a script you can run to get a full analysis of your tenant. But what it will do is it will create you a nice user list, and you can use that as a reference point for your migration for bringing these items in here. I mean, you can obviously do a quick add where you can type them in yourself, or auto discover, or a bulk add. Whichever way you want to bring them in is up to you. I'm going to show you some easy ways to do that right now. But really, if you're doing obviously a lot of users, let's say you've got a few hundred to do, you're going to be wanting to do that with your spreadsheet and your CSV file. So this is the user account screen, and you can see there's all my users. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick out the users I'm going to put into this first migration batch, and we call this one batch 1. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to use Bernard and Bob and also Elias here, batch 1. So this would essentially become this whole migration run sheet. But obviously this is just the source information. We've got to plug in what the target information is as well. Now you might have lots of different scenarios where this data is coming from and how this is going to be laid out, what domains are they coming from, and there's a lot of different variables inside any migration. So this is just an example of how I might attack this one if we're just bringing across the handful of users into this target tenant. But I'm going to create another column here. We just insert a column, and we'll call this one, I'm going to call this Migration Frog UPN. Now, I do know what they are. They're going to translate perfectly between one to the other. That's not always the case in a migration. But for this one, I'm just going to use a quick formula to grab what the UPN is here, chop off the Cozy Mouse at the end, and replace it with the Migration Frog. So that one's going to look like this, which is like this one here. So really it's just grabbing that first, it's looking for the @ symbol, and then just appending the Migration Frog at the end. A lot of ways you can do that, just the way I choose to, and I'm just going to copy that into these items, and there you can see there. Now what I will probably do is just grab all of them, and actually I'll just do that and paste those in just so we've got a good reference. But what we're doing here is now I'm interested in taking this here and just showing batch 1, which will show us just the list of users, and you can see here is my source and here is my target. Now it is important obviously that these accounts are created inside the target tenant and they're licensed and they're ready to go with a mailbox and the like. So we can just check one of those. Let's have a quick look at Bernard Moses. So you can see there he is there and he's licensed, and if we look at mail, you'll see that should be completely empty. There we are, 0%. So really that account is ready to be logged in and actually used. No problem with that. We just need to now use the MigrationWiz tool to get all the mail from the source tenant across into this target mailbox. Now the options are, if I go into MigrationWiz here, we can say bulk add. Now that's if you're using a spreadsheet, or you're using the cut and paste method here. We can grab the CSV file. If you do the download the sample, all that's really going to give you is a very, very simple one here. If I look at this this spreadsheet, you can see what it's after is really these items, and we're really just interested in the source mail and the destination mail. So if you want to go ahead and put those in on both of those items and use that as a CSV to import, you can. In this case, because there's not many of them, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just grab them like this, our list of 3, copy that, and I'm going to paste that in there, and likewise grab the destination as well. There we go, and drop that into there. Now you see they've all got a tick on them. Obviously they're going to bring all of those in, and we'll say old and newly detected mailboxes will be migrated. That's just to say, are we going to go over the top of anybody that exists in this batch already, and that's what that's for. So we don't have anybody in there, not a problem. We just hit save, and that should drop us back to the main screen, and it'll have the items ready to go there, as you can see. Now before we kick anything off, we do need to do some license work here. You can see that this guy here, Bob Jones, is already licensed. That means we've already done a migration for him at some point in this console with our respective logon, so we don't need to consume another license for him. We can reuse the same one. But these other two, Bernard and Elias, we haven't done any migrations previously before. That's why they've got a no tagged on them. So we just go and apply some licenses there for them. We are using the UMB license for this one. If you're using a normal mailbox licenses, you don't need to apply them here. They will just get picked up if you have them available to use when you kick off the migration. But in this case, we'll just hit apply, and that will pop back soon and say we have a yes on the UMB. So our first step on the migration really is we'll tag everybody, and we're going to go to start, and we're going to say verify credentials. Now what this is going to do is it will check all of the access to the mailboxes on both source and target, check the logins, check everything, and make sure that when we kick this off, it is going to work correctly. It is a good step to take, and it's definitely one that will help you solve any issues you may have before they come about when you actually need to start kicking off the migration itself. So definitely do a verify credentials before you start any other migration work. Now while it's doing that, I just want to go through this edit project and have a look at these advanced options, because there's some things that you can do in here that you may need to do to tweak your particular migration setup. Now first thing is there's your support tab. There's all of the settings you can see talking about secrets and other things there about the project, so don't change those. They're good as they are. But what we're really after here is we've got some the source and destination item here. We want to make sure that we're using impersonation to authenticate. That's important. And also, are we migrating from, and you can see here from mailbox recoverable items into what the default is, obviously mailbox to mailbox, but if it was a different one like mailbox to archive or copying over recoverable items one to the other, then that's where you would perform this particular step. But for now, obviously for this migration, we're going to leave it as it is. There's other items there for filtering if you want to have items that are only newer than a specific date to come over. You can set them up here, and there's other items here around things like the performance and how many concurrent migrations. Generally speaking though, we leave these alone unless you have a particular requirement to go in and change them. So that's just something to think about as you go into this migration. So we'll just pop up to the top here and wait for the verification to complete, and wait for that UMB bundle to become active. If we hit a refresh here, yep, there we go. We can see we've got a yes on those, and we also have the submitted tag. So we'll pause now on the video, obviously, and wait for that to come back and verify the credentials, make sure they're good. So while we're waiting for that one to go through, let's have a look back at this help desk article, because you can see what we've managed to do so far. If I scroll through this, you'll see we've got our licensing available, and obviously what some of the limitations are in terms of this migration. But what we've done here, we've prepared the source environment with, as you can see there, the Exchange Web Services and Exchange Online, with this link here to set things up correctly. We've gone through and created that migration service account. We have a user list with the CSV file that we've got there, which is obviously that discovery report which we ran there. We've done the destination environment exactly the same way, the same modern auth requirements there, and set up that MigrationWiz service account. And you can see here we've gone down to our mailbox migration project setup, and this part of the article talks us through exactly what we did, which was creating the new item, adding in all the relevant client IDs and client secrets, and working through those. If we run through these, you can see now adding the users in, the quick add, the bulk add, the auto discover, and any other advanced options that we're just mentioning before. And now we are at the point where it's saying run the verify credentials part. So you see we've made it quite a long way through the article. In fact, we're pretty close to finishing up. We're just going to do the pre-stage and then the full migration, which seems to be the simplest step actually, once you've got all your setup correctly, remembering that setup is valid for all of those people that you want to bring in. So if you want to add people to the batch or add different batches in, you can use the same project setup to bring more people in, so you can get that done as well. So what you can do, what I want to show you is, if you want to put them into separate batches and have separate items in your window here, what you can do, and this is certainly a good option, we can say clone the project, this item here. Now what that'll do is it'll take all of the settings that you have around the whole of the setup of your source and target, how you've done it, and create a brand new project for you so you can put more people in. That is the best way to approach the batching. So you might have batch, 1, 2, 3, whatever, however many you've got. Create a separate project for each batch, and then you can control them a little bit easier in that way. So if we just go through and do that, let's say clone project, and we'll give it a name, and we'll just call this clone 2. Hit OK there. What you'll see it'll do is it'll just create one there for us. If I go in there, you'll find that it doesn't bring the users across, obviously, but what we have here, if we edit the project, if we have a look at source settings, you can see it's brought over all of the credentials and the items that we need. So that's a nice, quick and easy way to duplicate these items. So now you can put more users into your second or third or however many batches you have, create them like that. So I'm interested back in this one though. We're just going to refresh and just see if it's managed to get further through. Now it's still in the submitted state. That is quite normal. It can sit there for a few minutes while it's getting picked up by the different workers in the background. So don't worry if it sits there for a little bit. It will trigger and then it will come back and tell us how that got on. So we'll just hang for that one at the moment, and we'll come back to that one very shortly. So you can see that's come back, completed the verification. We've got a little status tick there, which means we are good to go with the rest of it. So we're going to go now and do the pre-stage, and I'll show you what that means. If you grab everybody, I'm going to say start, and we'll do a pre-stage migration. Now what this really does is it's if we're going to migrate things ahead of time. So suppose we're now on a Monday, and we were going to do the migration maybe a week or even a month later. Pre-staging everything means it will take everything up to a certain date, and you can see here, if I go down the bottom, we can say 30 days ago is generally a good region. So what we're going to do is, so that when we do the full migration, when we actually want to do the cutover, we've already copied the lion's share of all the data. We're really just going to be doing the last 30 days plus the contacts and the calendar and things in the mailbox. So the pre-stage will just do mail, and we'll put the 30 days there. As I say, it is a good practice to do that first. If you're just doing a full migration and you want to bring everybody over just in one hit, then obviously just go straight to a full migration. But a pre-stage is certainly good. When you run the full migration over the top, remember that you're not going to get any duplicates. You can run it quite a few times, but it will know what it's migrated already and won't migrate it again. So bear that in mind. If you do a big cleanup on the source or a cleanup on the target during a migration, it's not going to delete anything on the other side. So migration tools never delete anything, whether it's in the source or the target. They only make a copy of what's there. So just bear in that mind with your users, that they really shouldn't be doing any mailbox cleanups when you start kicking off pre-stages and obviously doing a full migration. So let's hit the start migration here, and that will then just put it back into a submitted stage of that pre-stage, and once it's done, we'll just come back and see what those mailboxes look like. I've just logged into the mailbox for Bob Jones here, just so you can see what's going on. You can see that it's blank right now, so as this migration does start and put data in there, we can then refer back to this screen to make sure that things have come across correctly, as we would expect. Yeah. Now here you can see that the pre-stage has completed and the amount of data copied, as you can see on the top here. Now look at the inbox for this user that's in the target, and you can see everything is about a month ago, which is exactly what we said. In the pre-stage, we're going to have everything a month backwards, and you'll also notice as well, if I go into the calendar, there's no calendar entries for this week, and there's no contacts as well. So that's just an important fact for later on when we do the full migration. We will be bringing over the calendar and contacts. They're not part of the pre-stage, it's just mail is the pre-stage. So now if we say this is the migration night or the time we're going to actually do this cutover for them and get them to have all of the mail coming across into this target mailbox, what we do there is we'll go back in and tag them all again, and we're going to start and do a full migration. So you can see the additional items here is talking about all of the items like the rules and calendars and the like. And if you look down here, you can see that it doesn't give the option for that pre-stage at the 60 days. We can just go ahead and start that. Now, if you wanted to, you could have a timer on that to say, I want to kick it off at 10 p.m. or whatever you need to do. You can turn it on with that option there. But I'm just going to let this one run straight away. So we're going to hit Start Migration. And I'm expecting it to be a lot quicker than the pre-stage because it really only has to do that 30 days of mail plus those other items as well. So let's come back when that is all done. So now we can see that all the mail data is there. You can see that's right up to date. And also we have hopefully some calendar entries in here. There we go. A couple of those, and there should be some people too. Yep, some people. So really that's that is all good. That is our migration done for this particular user. These will be the same as well, Elias and Bernard, but we're just looking at Bob in the target tenant just to validate what we're seeing in the tool here is correct on the client side, and it looks like it is. Now our last step, if we were to be bringing over the cozymouse.com domain into the new tenant, we'd want to be now performing that task. We'll extract that domain out of the tenant and place it on the new one, assign all the new UPNs and do all that work in the back end of the tenants. But you're going to want to run like a delta pass of the full migration again once you've done that, just in case you've missed any mail that might have come in to the tenant during that cutover process. There could be a few little stragglers in there. So how we go about doing that is we were to look at the change domains, and we'll change the domains for the source and the destination, and then we'll rerun the copy. So what you might be doing here is we'd say change domains, and the cozymouse.com would probably become the cozymouse on Microsoft.com. That's the domain, the underlying domain of the cozymouse tenants. We'll assign that as a UPN. So we're not going to have a domain in place sort of left behind there. But in the destination side, we'd then put in cozymouse.com. Now watch what it does to these accounts here. So now you can see it's changed all of those, and it's changed here. So I would then go ahead and do a full migration pass on that one as well. I'm not going to run it on this particular demonstration because obviously we haven't moved the domain over, but you can see how easy it is then to run that final pass, and then you've got the cozymouse domain inside the target tenant. Then the last thing for cleanup, it's probably a good idea to go into those, both the source and target entry ID, and remove that application registration that you had there, and also remove those two MigrationWiz service accounts that you had there as well as. So that would be the last step to do it, and really from that point on your migration of these accounts is now done. So thank you for watching. I hope that is helpful. If you do have any questions, obviously please do reach out, but check out the help desk articles and also the follow along with the video when you're doing your own migration as well, and hope everything works out great for you. You have an awesome day.